Thank you for meditating and coming into this quiet and say peaceful moment with yourself in relationship with one another. You know, it's like it extends to all of us. So that is so lovely by doing this. I love that. So great. So continuing with the Incorruptible Body class seminar. So the title of today's of the subject of today's class would be mistaken identity, and this was a bit where we started last week with too. So we will refresh your memory a little bit. So mistaken identity is like, well, what was that again? Oh yeah, wait a minute. I really think as a human being, I think that I'm in an objective world with objects, with me walking around in a dream, and me being separate from all kinds of other objects that have influence on me. And so there's a continuous interaction from without, from me to someone else, from someone else to me, and all this. And I have adjusted myself to it, believing that that is all that I am, like that is my human identity. And now, since you discovered your spiritual path, you discover there's more, and you entered deeply into a whole different experience altogether for yourself. Like really something is changing. But it isn't that shifts just like this and then it's fine, it's arranged. So, okay, you're back in heaven, that's it. And for most of us it isn't that way. And so that's great. You know, something that came up when I was listening to the words in the meditation today was this: is you see that understanding of what is being shared is not necessary in order to have an experience with it. And I think that's a great discovery. You know, it's like you don't have to understand exactly what is being shared, but it does something with you, and that's actually great. You know, that's all that's necessary. So don't try to understand it, what is occurring, even though some parts of it, like the mistaken identity, you do definitely have to take a look at that, of course, and evaluate for yourself, like what am I doing? Of course, you know, that's something that you can do. And to a certain degree, that's helpful to see. Maybe the one word that comes up is insanity. It's like maybe to declare your human mind insane, because it actually is. You know, the things that it thinks are not according to the will of God, or say giving peace to everyone involved, or coming from the place of love and extension all the time. No, you have all kinds of thoughts, all kinds of ideas, and you express them, and you think you need to respond to when somebody appears to be doing something to you. You feel the need to respond and to say like, no, till so far, not any further. You put your foot down and say like, no, here I really have to protect myself. I have to, all these activities that you employ during the day. So how do we need to look at this? Because you understand that how important it is to see this right, you know, in order to move on in your spiritual development. It's really important to take a good look at what is occurring and where does it lead to, and what is actually behind all of this. And so this is a bit what we're going to do today, in the sense of doing. It's more like this passes by here, and we take a look at it. We take a peek into it to come to the basic premises of human existence, for one, and also to see how they fit in with the, say, the love of God, or the pure communication that's available to you. Just sharing beautiful words isn't it, that is not it. So there's more to this, because the beautiful words that are being shared, the beautiful ideas that are being shared, have absolutely consequences for you in the way that you identify yourself. So that's a bit of, say, a discovery, how that works. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about for now, that's all right. So I say this is not like a game of hypnosis to get you to say all kinds of things or believe all kinds of things. Don't get me wrong at all. It's like there's nothing to do with it. It is more like, well, this will follow. In a moment, I will share this with you. And the way it is organized today, so to speak, is like we take a really good look at the central idea behind your human existence, and then there's the transition period, because apparently you're transitioning into a different consciousness, into an expanded consciousness, where suddenly other things are possible too, other ways of communicating, other ways to look at yourself. And then you have, of course, the love of God. Like, that's also a part of this. We take a look at that. And those expressions you know very well, for instance, like I and my Father are one. So that's a beautiful whole idea. But in order to receive that completely, it has to do with what do you do then with your human existence, with your human mind. Like, how does this relate to one another? What is actually key here to move on into a different experience of yourself altogether? So this is getting to know that, so to speak. That is getting to know that, and recognizing things that are happening in your spiritual development, and giving them a place in the whole process. So yeah, if I can accomplish that in this, say, a half hour, 3/4 of an hour, or maybe a little bit more, that would be great. It would be wonderful. So I really need your presence here with that. And so we will have a break in between too, that I can promise. Like, after this 20 minutes, about 20-minute introduction to the human existence, there will be a break, so you can have your snack and your whatever you need to do. This is something I can promise you already, so you can get your snack and see it from there. But first I want to share a whiteboard that I made. So here's just a bit of say, remembrance of this idea. So we had it last week. We were talking about objective reality. So this is goes a bit further into detail. So one thing is, see, I call this world your dream. Like this world, your dream. I hope you can see it right. When I say this world, I mean the world that you believe, literally believe, that you live in, that you call my world, my life, and all this. So I'm just letting you look at this for a moment. So I will mention some of the ideas. Separation is part of this world. So it's like God did not create this world. This world that you see That has to do with your perception, with lack, limitation, seeking for love, sickness, judgment, chaos, identity, confusion. Like God did not create that world, so it is literally of your making. It is really the world that you believe you live in. You can call it your dream. So there's lack, there's space-time, conflict, seeking for love, death, losing the ones you love, changing always, it's always changing. World of sickness and pain, identity confusion, sickness, judgment, limitation, chaos. So I've been around a couple of times. So like, did God create this world? No, of course not. Like, God in his likeness created you whole and perfect, you know. You're one with your Father. There is no separation. So God did not create a world of separation that you see. So this is the way that you think about yourself as a human being, and you say like, well, that's a bit negative. It's all limitation, it's this and that, and chaos, and sickness, death, all this stuff. It's like, there were really good moments too, and then it's like, okay, well, yeah, sure, that I don't want to take those away from you, of course not, but if you come to the bottom of things, then you see these principles at work, or these ideas in your human existence. And these might be also, say, in fact, stimulating you to look further than this world that you created. So the funny part is, of course, that all these ideas of limitation and of sickness, of losing the ones that you love, the intense pain that you have felt as a human being, and maybe still are feeling as in your human existence, all these things, you know, in fact, that there is something else. Like, otherwise you wouldn't have a problem with it. If it was completely a part of it and you would accept that for what it is, then there would be no problem. But you actually experience a problem in your humanhood. There's something that is not satisfying you, in a sense. It's like, no, there's something going on with that. I actually don't believe this any longer. I cannot imagine knowing that there's a God somewhere, you know, knowing that there's a God. Why is all this occurring? You might have had that question too. So it's like, all this is based, when you look at it, on a mistaken identity. And how do I know that? Well, see, a few things are telling me that. And one of them is this, is like, if God created you perfectly in his likeness, like the love that he is, he created you out of his love, in love, and is forever love. How did all this happen? Like, this cannot be a reality with a capital R. You know, it can be my existence, sure, but it is not what I truly am. You know, and you're familiar with this. I'm sure of that. Like, you're familiar with this. So, looking for the way out of this imprisonment, which it really feels like an imprisonment, seeing that all these ideas are still very close to you. It's like some of them might still like completely be in your face, like, oh, I just lost a loved one, or I just entered into a whole idea of sickness, or I just did this or that. You know, that can, in your experience of yourself, happen. In your dream, anything is possible in that sense. So now that is good to realize, in fact. So you know there's something else, but you don't know how to come to that. You don't know how to do that. You're just like, okay, well, meditate. That is helpful. I do this, I do that. I read books, and I'm say watching videos, spiritual videos, in order to develop myself spiritually. And I hope that works. You know, all these things that are given to get you on the way to it, if you will, um, as you might call it, um, are helpful to a certain degree. So all is pointing in the same direction in your spiritual awakening. It's all pointing in the same direction. Some might not be the quickest way, but at least it's working. So, and then your concern about this seems to not work that well either. Like, because you think that you, so far in your human life, you could manage things, you could organize things for yourself, and you found a way to do that, and it worked out pretty good, or not so good, or not good at all. Either one of those. But now you're coming to a place, in fact, that's where I'm going to take you, where you see that actually there's no way that you can get out of this idea as you know it, not the way that you think that should work. So even for getting out of this, to stop this, say this law of man, and shift into the law of God, of love, that would be, that is something that you cannot do, that you cannot work out in yourself. You can't work that out. And that might be very frustrating to you, because you think like, well, I don't seem to be able to do this altogether. And before you know it, you think like a negative idea about yourself, thinking that you should be able to do this. Like you have learned all kinds of things in your human existence, and now this should be one of the things too. See, and this is where that actually gets stuck, in a sense. Like it gets stuck. It does not work that way. It's like there's no way that you can think yourself out of your human existence. That's not going to happen. And there's a reason for that, that's not going to happen. Like your human existence and your human frame of reference is a whole idea of limitation and separation. So no matter what you invent within that frame will be a limitation and also a confirmation of your separation. So that will never work that way. So this is why, in fact, the thing that's being asked of you is to leave that. Like Jesus says, leave your nets. Like leave all the thought patterns that you used to. Leave the whole value system that you have set up in your mind. Leave all of that behind and follow me. And in other words, like come with completely open hands to your Father. And then something can occur. But not if you still think that you can hold on to a part of it, or thinking that you can work this out yourself. You can't, and you don't have to. It's not necessary. And you say like, yeah, but how does it work then? Because what else is there? Well, that's a good question. Like, what else is there? Now, God, on the other hand, God on the other hand, doesn't know anything about this bubble that you're in. He doesn't know anything about it. So we, and I say we as good old Christians, so to speak, we have a tradition. We have been praying since Jesus' resurrection for freedom, for peace, for, say, wealth, for health. All these things we have been practicing, and we have been praying for that and paying for that, and setting up all kinds of churches and all this in order to facilitate a way to make this work, to come to an illumination, in fact, of mind through the human limitation. You could say it like that. So how did that work out? Well, as you can see, that did not work either. You know, so we have been praying, and Joel confirms this many times too, as well as in the Course in Miracles. This is being used a lot too. It's like all of this you thought would work, but it was all, say, man-made ideas about God, man-made ideas about goodness, man-made ideas about forgiveness, man-made ideas about communication with God, thinking that if you eat a bit of bread that you are in communication with God. Or and I'm not saying that there's anything bad about it. It is just, it has nothing to do with recognizing the truth of who you are. So that's one thing that will come up in the letting go of your human existence and the whole thought pattern that is glued to it, and even in your religious background, like that is glued to it. And that's also something you will have to let go of in order for you to come to a new communication. It's like an authentic communication with God. So that's all part of that. And you can say like, well, I would love to skip that step because I love to go to church and I love to do this and that. It's like, sure, I don't want to take that away from you, like I just said too. It's like I'm not taking anything away from you. It's just seeing that this was all part of your human frame of reference. It would not be the way to leave that behind and to be born again in spirit, to be born again in a whole new communication, in a whole new frequency altogether, free of any kind of limitation, free of change. It's like the immutable law of God. Like it will never change. God loves his Son, and he's one with his Son. And who is his Son? That's you. That's you. So that is one thing. That is a Trinity, whatever you want to call that. It's like that's one thing. Oneness. So it has no other thing. You know, it's like a whole expansion of mind that keeps expanding, that keeps adding joy to all of this. So transitioning, that would be the next stage. But maybe take one more look at the whiteboard that I just showed to you. So you see, this is your world: chaos, limitation, judgment, identity confusion, all these things. It's amazing. It's like that's all part of your human existence. So I want you to take a really good look at this. That's why I bring it back up. The idea of death, the idea of losing the ones you love. Like, do you really think that God would do that to you, that you lose the ones you love? Or that you have to seek for love, or that such thing as conflict exists? Is there conflict in the mind of God? No, of course not. Is there lack or limitation in the mind of God? No, there isn't. So then, that has a lot of consequences. You know, that has a lot of consequences for your daily existence, for your daily way of doing, so to speak, and thinking, your daily way of thinking. It's like all this is not coming from God. So, and praying for it, that it will change within my frame of reference, is not going to do it. So it really needs to come from somewhere else. And I have no control over that. Like, no, I just have to admit that I don't know how to get out of this, and that I will not try to get out of it. I'm just willing to let this go. Like, then something can happen. Not by me trying to get myself into my illumination. You know, so that is really important. So there's now the next part that we're going to take a look at, is the idea of transitioning. And then the last part will be like the other side. So in your transitioning, something happens too. So I'm getting to that in a moment.